there's a high degree of risk of failure for any new company. You're overtasked, you're undermanned. It's very easy to be overwhelmed and to be filled with thoughts of doubt. Being a new entrepreneur, I've improved over the last year and I've organized my days in a way that I don't feel overwhelmed. I mean, there's periods where you have deadlines, those are going to happen, but I've deep dived into how I can manage the chaos. The chaos is not going away, but you manage it in a way that's not so dissimilar from being deployed. There is no predictability when you're overseas. So it's not about creating predictability, it's creating a structure.
Is that much of it? That's not much of a change for you, right?
My name is Carey. I used to load bombs in the Air Force, and now I'm a writer, a filmmaker, and an entrepreneur. Through using the post 9/11 GI Bill to go to college, working hourly jobs to pay the bills, and freelancing my way into a career, I've studied what it takes to successfully transition from service to civilian, and that study has become a conversation. On this podcast, I speak to other veterans, successful artists, and entrepreneurs about their transition, what they did well, where they failed, what they learned, and most importantly, how they applied their skills. Episode 88 features Bobby Holland, a retired Navy SEAL and the co-founder of Hoolie Golf, a golf apparel company that offers uniquely badass golf polos and golf hats for diehard golfers. Welcome. This is Veteran Made.
All right, quick word. Second episode that will be promoting the same product, Go Pills, from last week's episode. Again, I've continued to use them. I've continued to love using them. Really, really excited to have it in my protocol, my daily protocol, from a health and wellness standpoint. Just very important to me that I put clean ingredients in my body that helps me go when I need to go, but more importantly, helps me build a protocol that allows me to rest when I need to rest. So for me, this is about living an integrated lifestyle, one where I am prepared and ready to go, and then one in which I am able to and interested in unplugging, resting, relaxing, and resetting overnight. If you have not yet, grab a pair of Go Pills, gopills.com, not a pair, a set, not a set, a bottle of Go Pills at gopills.com. Use code VM15 at checkout for 15% off. Enjoy the episode. All right, we are live. Good afternoon for me here on the East Coast at my parents' house in South Carolina, and good morning for you on the West Coast. Bobby Holland, welcome to Veteran Made.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carey. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. I'm stoked to have you. So for those who don't know who you are, if you could just give us a brief primer on where and when you served, and then we'll jump into your business.
Sure. I'm Bobby Holland. I'm a retired Navy SEAL. I spent the first 2 decades of this century, I guess, in the SEAL teams. So, yeah, and then got out in summer 21, ended up going to business school, and then launched Hoolie last year. And I'm the CEO and founder of Hoolie.
Awesome. I love it. So yeah, Hoolie, for those who don't know, Hoolie Golf, which is an apparel company that you started here, right after retirement, or kind of during retirement, I guess. And where did your interest in golf come from, and how new of an interest is it, or is it something you did while you were on the teams?
Yeah. So I did not grow up golfing. I found golf about 12 years ago. I was in the teams. We had a pending deployment, and we were waiting on like a technical document to send us out the door, a deployment order. And that order never came, and our deployment ended up getting delayed. Weeks became months. Anyways, we found ourselves with some time on our hands, and my OIC, my officer in charge, was like, "Hey, let's take the boys golfing." And it just took that one outing. We went out as a platoon. I hit the ball. It came off sweet just one time during that round. I went and got some clubs. Like that night, I went to the Golf Mart, got some used clubs. I mean, it was like an awful set. And then my love for golf, it just kind of metastasized from there. So, yeah, I ended up deploying a couple months after that. This is back when we thought we were closing down Iraq, circa 2011. And I brought my clubs with me, and every little bit I had to, go hit into a net on our compound, I would do that. And yeah, I just fell in love with the game, man. It's one of the things, the and our brand kind of, centered around this idea of folks like myself who are driven to be the best versions of themselves, and then they find golf, and it's like I don't like to settle for being bad at something. So that's like the journey I've been on for the last 12 years or so. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind of when I fell in love with the game.
I love it. Yeah, golf is one of my wife played in college. She played at Ole Miss, obviously at a very high level, 4-year letter winner in the SEC. So she's really good. And she and I kind of got her back into golf because it's something I picked up after service for myself with some friends when I was working in the restaurant industry, and I was obviously terrible, but I'd go out for a beer drinking rounds and smoke cigars and like have a good time and do that. And I enjoyed it. And she didn't have a great experience at the end of college. And so then when she and I got back together, I said, "Hey, let's go out and play golf." And she's like, I don't really play anymore. Like, I kind of fell out of love with the game. And I was like, well, let's just go drink some beers. And, we both smoked cigarettes at the time. I was like, let's go smoke some cigarettes, drink some beers, like have a good time. She's like, I've never done that before. And I said, oh, wow, that's right. You've only ever played competitive rounds of golf since you were 10,
Yeah.
all the
Not
way
the same as
until you were.
recreational golf. Yeah.
No, not the same at all. And so it's been cool because I really enjoy being bad at something in order, like you're saying, in order to get better, not to settle
Yeah.
for being bad, but to be bad at something and try to develop a skill and try to attack something that otherwise I hadn't, played earlier in life. It's also funny you say that you hit one ball and it came off the club head sweet. They always say that all it takes is one good shot to bring you back to the game, but for you, it's like one good shot got you into the game.
Yeah, and I mean that one good shot each round keeps me coming back, and the bad shots do as well. I mean, it's just I don't know. There may be something else out there like it. I don't know that there is. It's intoxicating. It's addicting. Um, but yeah, man, it's been a wild ride how I ended up here.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone who went to high school with me or spent any time in the SEAL teams with me would think I would be right here, right now, doing this.
So where did your entrepreneurial spirit come from? Where did that spark? And was it related to golf? Like, were you hitting balls on the compound and playing, when you weren't deployed in TDY and thinking I might want to get into the golf business, or was it golf and then business and they came together? Walk us through the initial stages of blending the two. All right, we're back. The funny thing about technology is we're struggling with the connection here, but you could hear me and see me. I couldn't hear you and see you, but we're texting. And so you're responding via text. It's just wild how technology works and doesn't work sometimes.
Yeah.
Like that. All right. So jumping back in, I was just asking, walk us through the blending of your interest in golf and entrepreneurship and kind of where those two things came together, if they came together or which one came first.
Yeah. So I found myself towards the end of my career, very, very late in my career, thinking about my future. I thought I was probably going to do like 24, 26 years, somewhere around the 20-year mark. My expiration date, came to be, and I was like, man, it's time to find something else to do. And I didn't know what that was yet. So yes, I had this like growing obsession with golf, and I was throwing out some ideas like, maybe I would go be a caddy or find my way into the golf industry some other way. No delusions that I'm going to, be good enough to compete at a high level. But anyway, so I ended up not knowing what I wanted to do. I ended up applying to business school at UCLA Anderson's program, their executive MBA program. And that was really, for me, kind of a runway, if you will, out of service to like just provide some opportunity, some training, expand my network. But I went into that not having any end state in terms of like I'm trying to jump into this industry or the golf industry. But it was during that program that I had, I guess you could call it like an epiphany. I literally woke up one Saturday morning with the seed of what would be, Hoolie. And basically that was right before I started my program at UCLA. And we had an opportunity. We had to take as an elective we had to take some electives, and I opted to take an entrepreneurship class. And this class, you either had to join a team or you had to create a team and pitch to others and recruit, your team members. And so I had this idea for it. It was a golf bag back then. I had this idea for a golf bag, so I decided, what the hell, man, let's go for it. And I ended up pitching a team, and we joined a team, and then it just kind of kept going. So I ended up joining their entrepreneurial pipeline, their track. It's like an 18-month track, and through that, basically, Hoolie, as we know it, was born, and I was inspired to take the leap and make a business out of it and pursue it. So, I didn't have this very clean route to entrepreneurship. I didn't leave the service thinking I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I just knew I wanted to follow my passions, and I wanted to do something that were checking those life boxes for me in terms of the type of life I wanted to live after service. And, one thing led to another, and here we are.
If you don't mind me asking, what was, so how kind of codified was your life approach as you're just that caught my ear as you're saying, I was thinking about the kind of life I wanted to live and how I would live my life post service, integrated with, obviously in this case, business education and then running a business. What that sounds like a really strong foundation to have going into starting a business. How did you think about that?
Yeah, so we were talking earlier, and the Honor Foundation came up. I think they played a pivotal role for me for just opening up my mindset to transition and in that next chapter. And whether or not you go through a program like that, the Honor Foundation is a program for spec ops, transitioning vets to basically set them up for success whenever they leave service. Um, Not knowing what I wanted to do next, it was very important for me to kind of at least design, like I said, the type of life I wanted to live. So anyways, there was a lot of self-exploration in terms of, what my priorities are, what makes me tick, what drives me, like what pulls me up, out of bed, excited to go do something. And I didn't have any answers when I went into that program. And to be honest, I didn't have the answers when I left the program, but it started this journey of kind of self-reflection and just opening up my mind to, you know, um, I, I think us being veterans, there's a certain amount of competition to our peer group, right? Like we have that in service. You're constantly competing, like not in a bad way, but in a positive way. If you're on a run, you want to be your buddies. You want to be front of the pack. In terms of operating or performing, you're always trying to do your best, be a good teammate, etc. Um, and so to a certain extent, that extends also to our next chapter. It's easy to compare ourselves to these people that get out and are highly successful in these different areas, these different industries, and it's hard not to compare yourself there. And that expectation itself needs to be met with, right? So I think, one of the pitfalls is, veterans for whatever reason find themselves doing something maybe for the wrong reasons. And it's tough, man. Not everyone leaves the service in the same spot. You got people leaving, a couple years in. Maybe their financial obligations aren't as strong. Maybe they're just starting a family, or maybe they don't have a family. And then you got people that are completely indoctrinated, like myself, who've spent 2 decades in the military, don't really know anything else, have financial obligations, and you get out and that's a reality. So, I don't want to paint a picture that's like, yeah, there's some common sense. Hopefully you can pursue your passion and it checks all the financial boxes and that security that you need. That's not always the case. But long story short, I'll get there. Is I went through my priorities, and one thing that I wanted was good culture. So to be surrounded by good people, to be in an environment that was the type of culture that I've been accustomed to. I wanted to have some sort of design over my time in my life. I didn't want to start over. Like one thing I looked at for a bit was management consulting, and it just took a couple sit downs with some folks. Like, man, I'm not a 24-year-old. I'm not going to work 60-hour weeks with a family, so I don't want to do that. I don't want to travel and be on the road all the time. Um, in terms of money, I had my goals there, but I'm not just trying to be rich, right? So it was walking away with that priority was really helpful because then, once like basically what your life design kind of looks like in terms of your, top 3 or 5 priorities there, then you got everything to look at. And then you just need to narrow down, okay, what is most aligned with my passions and my skills. And that kind of happened organically through UCLA's program. Like I said, I had no designs to be an entrepreneur, but as I was pursuing Hoolie as a school project and we're doing research, I started creating a brand. I started getting, um, part of the creative aspect of actually like designing products and the brand and then, solving these problems. And then it just dawned on me. I'm like, man, I'm kind of digging this. Like there's a lot of things from my past job in terms of, being in kind of like a high risk, high reward environment, a challenging environment, uh, constant problem solving, creativity. I mean, that is essentially special operations, just, in a different venue. Um, and so, yeah, it's just like the more I got into it, the more that kind of built and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, a couple threads to pull on there. One is the thing you were just saying, which I think is really important. Not everybody is going to have access to an MBA. Not everybody is going to have an interest in an MBA or any sort of master's program like that. But I think what people can pull from what you're describing is that it actually took you doing some of this work, some of the creative work, some of the operational work, some of the thinking about very small, right, pieces that you're starting to put together. And through that work, you discovered an interest for the future. And if
Yeah.
you were just thinking philosophically about the future as an entrepreneur or as a business owner or as a, for people listening, insert XYZ, you can get bogged down in thinking too far ahead. Whereas if you're thinking very granularly about what's in front of you and just trying something, just tinkering with something, logo design,
Yeah.
whatever it is, you discover those little pieces that you can then put together that become that thing that you're looking forward to in the future.
Yeah, man, that's a great observation. And, I'll just add one more thing is, it, especially for, servicemen and women out there transitioning, new veterans, whatnot. It's okay to not know what you want to do. And the likelihood that you're going to find this level of purpose commensurate with, what you had in service is going to be very challenging, so being able to replace that thing is going to be very difficult. And you may have to make decisions for financial reasons or whatever. Um, but yeah, I think, the idea is to put yourself in situations to create opportunity, to create your own luck, and to give yourself an opportunity to grow. Right. And to your point, to experience new things. So, I mean, that's what business school was for me. And no, you don't need to have an MBA. Um, you absolutely don't need to have that. That was just my olive branch, not knowing what I wanted to do, to create some opportunity and to give myself some space to figure it out. And lucky for me, like that happened in that amount of period.
Yeah, I think as a community, we tend to put a little bit too much of a primer on like doing things the way that you're supposed to do things, right? Like
Yeah.
there's benefits to uh, operating within the hierarchies that we operated within in the military, whether that's in an elite unit or a conventional unit. Um, and what we need to, this is a refrain that I keep saying, and people will hear it, is like within those hierarchies, there's commander's intent, right? There's all that opportunity, all that room for you to do the things that you need to do within the obviously SOPs and ROEs and all of that stuff. But there's so much freedom and flexibility within the environment. It's on you to take that flexibility and displace it into your new environment, because your new environment might not give it to you as obviously as the previous one that we were in. But that's a framework, that's a skill, that's an experience that we have that we need to take with us. And instead of looking at it as a limitation, we need to look at it as an opportunity. Because to your point, everybody's going to have it. I got out at 4 years, right? I was single. I didn't have any kids. I didn't do any school in the military. You retired after 20 plus years. So yeah, very different, but also we still had similar opportunities and unique to each of us. Like you need to take a little responsibility for where you are, not to dismiss or minimize where somebody may or may not be, but just to say, all right, well, what's this like for me? Where am I uniquely situated right here? And what can I do with what's right in front of me?
Yeah, that's great. And getting out is daunting, and I don't care what station of life you're in, it is. And when I said earlier, being indoctrinated, I mean, essentially, if you do 2 decades of anything, it's going to be tough to leave that. So yeah, I think it's really about managing expectations and having some patience to know that, first of all, it's okay to not know exactly what you want to do and what your number one passion is or your new career is. And I think it's true. A lot of veterans kind of bounce around, and that's not dissimilar from, I think, the rest of everyone else figuring out their lives. Especially seems to be pretty popular with the younger generation. But yeah, man, give yourself some patience to figure it out. But yeah, you can be proactive. Put yourself, if you want to do something and you don't have the right tools to do that, well, go pursue that. Great thing about being in the military is we got some great educational benefits. That's only one way to do it. If you need to go do an internship, you need to find mentors. Like, yeah, don't be a victim of your circumstance. But I do think, and I think the service is getting better to help out veterans transitioning, is the education piece has got to be there. It's not just, get a haircut, shave, check the watch bill, and, hand salute, you're out and a civilian, right? Like, you have to do a little bit of work. It's not just about building a resume. I mean, there's some thought that needs to be put in there. And I think if you do the work, then you're going to put yourself in a good situation for growth along that journey. It doesn't mean day one out of the service, you've figured it all out, but you're going to be on a path to figure it out.
Right. And just one last thing on that sort of philosophy of transition before we transition into talking golf and Hoolie specifically, is that if we sit back and think about it as a transitioning service member, you actually wouldn't want it to be that way anyway, because you start in some sort of basic training or boot camp, you make your way through some sort of, A school or technical school or, whatever branch, MOS and all that stuff. Then you move into, your entry level, then your OJT, then you're working your way up. Like, that's how life works, regardless of which environment you're in, the military or the civilian world. So the idea that you're going to have everything figured out on day one, you actually wouldn't want it that way anyway, because so much of the journey, so much of the fun of this is the journey, and that's where all the growth happens, and it's where you discover things that you maybe didn't realize about yourself. Anyway, okay, so when did the shift happen for you from a golf bag to apparel? Was that at Anderson?
Yeah, it was. That just happened through our research. I mean, basically we were doing market research into both industries and looking at fundamentally, what was Hoolie about? What is this brand? What differentiates us as a brand? And that to me was important to nail down, because if you're going out with a bunch of products, that only lasts so long. Like if you go to market with just products, it's not very defensible. So I felt it was important to create a brand. We ended up doing a lot of research, and we also had some competence in the apparel side. So on my team, the first team member that joined Hoolie was Kevin Lee. And, this is like, I feel like the universe every now and then just kind of like, it just works, man. It just puts the pieces together. But as I was recruiting my team, UCLA had like a bio book, like a PDF with pictures and just brief description of the cohort. And I was literally just thumbing through looking for anyone who had golf as a hobby. And the first person I came to was Kevin Lee, and he had been in the apparel and garment sourcing industry for last couple of decades. So reach out to him, and he was like, "Yeah, man, let's do it." And then as we're doing all this research, the aha moment was like, "Hey, Kevin's got some experience here. We actually look at the market itself. It's much easier to get a brand established in apparel, and it doesn't take any more of a conversation to know that you may not be an avid golfer, but just bear with me for a minute. Pretend you're an avid golfer. How often are you buying a golf bag? You know,
I mean, once probably, right? Yeah.
you could argue the more avid you are, maybe you get a couple more, but it's not that often.
Right.
Whereas people change out their clothes all the time. So that was the key driver to push away from golf bags for the time being. But I have a really neat idea, man, for golf bags. So hopefully, if and when everything goes well with Hoolie, we'll move that direction as well.
That's funny. The golf bag thing in particular is funny. I'm at a spot in my game right now where I'm like mid 90s. I've shot 90 one time, and I'm hoping to start breaking 90 every once in a while. Once I can consistently break 90, and I'm actually a 17, that's when I'm going to get myself a new golf bag.
Yeah.
And so it's funny I kind of got to earn that. But yeah, I mean, to your point, it's like the polos are, you don't want to wear the same thing to the course every single time. And you like to have some variety in your day-to-day wardrobe. And if you're playing enough golf, you want to have that variety there too. So I think from a market standpoint, it makes sense. You're going to get more repeat customers on polos than you, and hoodies and outerwear and all that stuff than you are on a bag. So you're developing this in the program at UCLA, and then what was was it daunting for you to go to market? How did you approach that, and what was your mindset, and how did you feel?
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, for any startup to do anything, it's daunting, right? Because you're putting, there's usually some financial risk. There may be, reputation risk. UCLA gave me a lot of confidence. So essentially, Hoolie became our capstone, and it was a proof of concept. Is this viable to take to market? So, I felt, and our team felt, that we had graduated that the concept was viable, that this brand was a thing. And the more I got into it, the more energy I had, and the more of a vision that developed for Hoolie. But the real work was done after school, like after we graduated. So it took us about almost a year to launch. I guess about 10 months, 10 months after we graduated, to get everything lined up. So to get our sourcing, our operations lined up, and to make sure that it was important for us. We are a premium brand, right? Like we're in the premium category. So our products, our polos, they have to be commensurate with that level that people would expect, right? You're paying, a pretty penny for our products. It's important that we, exceed their expectations. So we made sure, and that this happened, as we were in Anderson, and then, the months preceding was making sure that we got the right fabric and that we could execute, and that all the small details, would meet people's expectations or exceed. I never want to meet expectations. But yeah, man, daunting, and not, we're a small team, right? There's just a couple of us that are wearing a lot of different hats. I'm wearing hats I've never worn before. I'm working in disciplines I've never worked before. So I've, over this last year, and we're just a couple of days away from our, first year being in business, having launched last April 1st. Yeah, man, it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of hurdles to get to market to become an entrepreneur. And, constantly there's that voice telling you, I don't know, man, not sure if this is going to work. Can we pull this off? And you just gotta grind through it. And you got to the conversation we were having earlier about transitioning and being proactive there. That's the type of stuff I've been doing in terms of marketing, media communication, product development, product lifecycle operations, admin, finance, like all these things that you think of are important in business. Business school gave us a crash course for that stuff, but really the last year has been developing our capabilities and trying to find force multipliers within our network who can, you know, expand our ability to do what we're doing now.
Yeah. So two questions along that front. The first question, we can pick them apart and take them one at a time, but I'll ask both of them now and we can come back to the second one. First
Yeah.
question being what experiences did you pull from and what tools did you use to overcome that resistance? I don't know if you read Stephen Pressfield or not, that kind of capital R resistance
Yeah.
that we all experience, whether as an artist or as an entrepreneur, anybody who's trying to accomplish something. First question. Second question, then what experiences did you pull from and what tools did you use to keep yourself from getting overwhelmed as you were listing all of those things that are required to run a business?
Yeah.
So the first one, during and or kind of pre and during launch, what did you pull from and what did you use to defeat that resistance?
Yeah. So I'm of the mindset that I don't like being told I can't do something, or I don't like the excuse of, I'm not trained to do that. I don't have a background in that. Like, I think that's an awful excuse. So, I just started doing, and I think, as a startup, as an entrepreneur, that you just need to get started, and you need to know that you're not going to have all the right answers. You need to make sure you don't make critical mistakes as well, right? Mistakes will be made, but you don't want to do anything that's going to, burn the house down per se. But just shy of that, man, get your hands dirty, get in there. And, I mean, we're talking watching YouTube videos, teaching myself everything from coding, like the website, to be able to make like minor tweaks and stuff like that. I taught myself Adobe Illustrator. So again, so we have a great designer, by the way, does most of our designs. But I found myself as we were iterating through designs, like, hey, like to make a tweak here or there. So I got the program and I was like, you know what? Okay, teach myself to make this, and then I started designing shit. Like, and actually, this is a Holland original right here. This is our nautical polo. So this was hand designed by me. But yeah, it's just like stuff like that, man. I mean, so like if you go through all of the different departments in the company, all the different disciplines, Kevin and I, wear hats in all of those, and it's just like digging in. Okay, what does right look like? So I've leveraged my network a lot, and within that network, hey, do you have an expert in this area or that area? And I've had so many calls that have been extremely helpful there, creating relationships. And then, it's like, okay, that's what right looks like. They provide me some resources or help me along my way, kind of give me some mentorship there. And then you also have these relationships with people that you can check in with, and you'd be surprised how many people are willing to help you out. So, one of the biggest recommendations I can give to veterans is use your network. And if you're shy, become unshy and go connect with people. And I mean, that they're a huge reason of why we are where we are right now.
Yeah, my uncle's an entrepreneur in fintech. Back in the late '80s and into the mid '90s, as he was scaling a company that eventually became very successful. He one of the earliest pieces of advice he gave me as I was scaling both this podcast as well as the video production company that I run. He said, do everything you can learn how to do until you absolutely cannot do it. So that
Yeah.
includes operations, that includes finance, that includes accounting, that includes design, that includes everything up until you absolutely can't do it. And then you can afford to hire somebody part-time or full-time to do it. You have to do everything up to that point. And there's two things about that on the entrepreneurial front. Like one, that will weed out people that really just don't want to be or can't be entrepreneurs. And what it does is it energizes those of us that can and want to, because while it is overwhelming, while it is frustrating, while it is a lot, if you get energy from that, you're just going to get more energy from it. And
Yeah.
then you'll understand everything enough to be that deep generalist, so that when you're able to not have to do all of those things, you have an understanding of what you're asking the people that will eventually take over those tasks from you.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you hit on some really good things there. I think the latter to your points right there is so important because, you know, the folly of a lot of entrepreneurs is they're great with ideas, they're great at getting something started, and tech startups are probably the most famous at this, and then they get to a point where they can't manage the company because they don't have the right skills to do that. So, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I'm a CEO in training right now, essentially, right? It's like all these different skills that I'm learning in these different, facets of the business allow me when I hire, the talent to fill those roles to manage that. So yeah, I think that's, extremely important. And yeah, I agree with you, man. I think the more you do and the more you learn how to do, the more energy you get. I look at the stuff I was putting out a year ago and where I am now. Man, it's like, yeah, look, we have a lot to do as a company, but I'm proud of where we are now. And I know, as long as you have this kind of growth mindset,
Yeah.
you'll just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I think, like, so, and on the, not to get too nitty gritty on video
Yeah.
production, but if you're working with a union crew or even a non-union crew that either works union sometimes or works with union guys and gals, and you're on a film set, if it's not your department, you actually are not allowed to touch the equipment. I mean, if you're talking to grip and electric equipment, lights and plugs and things like that, don't touch it if you don't know anything about it. And what that has helped me with is leaning on other people, because if we come from that military mindset, that environment, if you're in it, as you said, indoctrinated for 20 years, or even me just being in for 4 years, like, you're a can-do person, right? You're somebody who wants to be able to do
Yeah.
everything, and you should, per our previous point, do as much as you can. But like you said, I love that, get unshy. I'm going to steal that. Get unshy and force yourself to rely on other people if and when you can. If you ask somebody, the worst thing they can say is no, right? And if they say
Yeah.
no, they say no. If they say yes, then Lord only knows what you've opened yourself up to in terms of options and opportunities.
Yeah. That's it, man. And, you asked a couple minutes ago, I believe the second part of that question was, how do you endure or something of that nature, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a big part of it, man. So I think, most ventures, are similar in that there's a high degree of risk of failure for any new company. Yeah, sure, there's a spectrum, whatnot. So, how do you do all the jobs of a company, right? You're overtasked, you're undermanned. How do you do that? It's easy to be overwhelmed. It's very easy to be overwhelmed, um, and to be filled with thoughts of doubt. So, you know, uh, I love the old adage. What's the best way to eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time, man. Right. And so, like, what that means for me is I really have to prioritize our goals for the company and my time. And especially when you're a small team, you have to do that as a team because it's very easy to for these days to disappear. I mean, there's not enough hours in a day to do all the work that you need to do, and it's very easy to get distracted and to do this stuff. But you really got to focus on that 20% that has the 80% most value to what you're trying to bring to the company and the challenges that you're trying to solve. So that's been a learn and process thing, right? It's like being a new entrepreneur. I've improved over the last year. I've improved greatly on that, and I've organized my days in a way that I don't feel overwhelmed. I mean, there's periods where you have deadlines and where things need to get done, and there's late nights, and those are going to happen. But I'm definitely, this last year I've deep dived into how I can, you know, manage the chaos. Like the chaos is not going away, but you manage it in a way that, I mean, it's not so dissimilar from being deployed, right? It's like there is no predictability when you're overseas. So it's not about creating predictability. It's just creating a structure for how you're going to deal with the chaos.
Yeah, I think that's right. So where did where did the branding come from? Where did the name come from? As you were building out the creative kind of brand assets, brand
Mhm.
identity, and all of that stuff, where did it come from?
Yeah. So when I say the universe, kind of sometimes things just kind of work together. Back before I started the UCLA program, and I had the idea that Saturday morning of Hoolie. Um, I drew all weekend. I drew all weekend. I iterated over this golf bag, and I had also had a name, which had Hoolie in the title. Um, and I was just I like the way it sounded, and that's where I started with it. I like the way it sounded. I like the way it looked, and I started to do some just some research on the word. Okay, like for me, I'm big on imagery and symbols and symbolism, and like if there's deeper meanings and connections, stuff like that. Anyways, I was doing my research and I found out that Hoolie. So backing up, I need to take like 10 steps back. I was a breacher in the SEAL teams. A breacher's job is basically to break into enemy compounds by several different means. They got manual tools, mechanical tools, torches, explosives, you name it. One of those manual tools, it's a giant pry bar. I have one back here actually. It's a Halligan tool or a Hoolie tool. That's what we call it. So I like the imagery of this tool that we use that is, breaking down doors, breaking down windows. I like the symbolism that kind of had for the brand. And as I'm doing my research, I found out that there's a connection with golf because Hoolie is old Scottish golf slang for blowing a strong wind. And, later I went to Scotland and I got to hear that, for myself. I got to play in a Hoolie. But to me, the imagery between what the Hoolie tool does and what a Hoolie, a strong wind does is like, man, like if there's any sort of signs telling you something's right, yeah, that was it, man.
Yeah, bro, it doesn't get much more providential than that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. Is the H? Does the H kind of have that in the Hoolie have that crowbar kind of? Is that, or am I reading into it too much?
Yeah. So the H is the Hoolie is windswept. Yeah.
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 Okay.
So it's yep, and so is the pin logo, what I have here on my chest.
Yep.
It's also windswept, so as being blown
Yeah.
by a Hoolie, right?
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Cool. I want to be respectful of your time. I know we got late start on my end, but you've got a hard stop here in a few minutes, so I want to be respectful of that. Before I ask you kind of an open-ended question that I asked to end each episode, can you talk a little bit about your experience with the caddy school? I don't want to leave them out. That sounded really cool.
Yeah. So I took part in a program, the Caddy School for Soldiers. Basically, they send veterans to Scotland, um, and they teach them how to be caddies. I couldn't think of anything cooler to be a part of. So aside from giving veterans an opportunity to for gainful employment in the golf industry to be a caddy, so a lot of these guys get out and they end up going back and they'll go to a resort town and they'll caddy, they'll loop. Um, but aside from getting that skills, like it's just a great organization to bring veterans together, let them create a community of shared experience. Um, Man, it was a blast for the golfers out there. It's Scotland and St. Andrews in particular. It's breathtaking, man. Like it's amazing. you feel the history. The history is all around you at all times. Um, I had the best experience, man. Loved it.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Okay, where can folks find you and the brand on social media, on the website, and what can we
Yeah,
link? What can we tag? What do you want to drive traffic to?
sure. Yeah. So our website is Hoolie, HOOLIE golf.com. And we are at Hoolie Golf on all social media. I'm also at Lead Bob Holland on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, please find us, connect with us. We're trying to connect with hardcore golfers, man, growth minded, man of action. So if you know them, send them our way.
I love it. Certainly we'll do. We'll tag and collaborate and all that stuff on posts. All right. So, Bobby, I ask an open-ended question to end each episode of the podcast. What's on your heart and your mind for our community right now? Could be a piece of advice, something you want to get off your chest, or something you want to reiterate from what we've talked about today. But, Bobby, what's on your heart? What's on your mind?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's been a lot of, education and news on what veterans have been struggling with the last couple of years. Um, And so, I think the one thing on my mind is just look out for each other, right? Like we're a strong community, so look out for other veterans and take care of yourselves, right? It's easy to not do that. So, I think we have an obligation to ourselves, our community, our families, to do both those two things. And I guess all great things come in three. We talked about this earlier, but have patience and know that you're going to get where you need to go. It may not happen overnight, but be resilient. You've already shown that you've been resilient in service. So, translate that, in your next chapter there.
Love it. Appreciate you, sir. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your energy. Appreciate the polos. I love them. I'm excited to
All
get
right.
some more.
Yeah. Thanks, Carey.
Cheers.